The Providence Superior Court fell into a heavy, unnatural silence as Sarah Mitchell entered through the double doors. She was 38 years old, dressed in a plain navy blue dress that hung loosely on a body thinned by illness. Since her diagnosis, she had lost more than 20 pounds. Each step was careful and measured, one hand wrapped around her husband David's arm for balance. A pale blue headscarf covered the hair chemotherapy had taken, and no amount of makeup could fully conceal the exhaustion etched into her face. Every line told the story of a woman fighting for her life. Across the aisle sat Julian Cross, age 33, CEO and founder of Velocity Tech, a startup valued at $300 million. The company branded itself as the future of workplace efficiency, powered by AI-driven productivity optimization. Julian wore a black turtleneck, the unofficial uniform of tech visionaries, paired with $400 designer jeans and limited edition Nike sneakers worth $850. A titanium Apple Watch, priced at $1,299, buzzed repeatedly on his wrist. He glanced at it often, typing responses mid-proceeding, as if the courtroom were merely an interruption to more important matters. Behind him sat 5 attorneys from Morrison & Clean, a firm known for defending powerful tech companies against employment and discrimination lawsuits. Leading them was Amanda Morrison herself, billing at $1,050 an hour, notorious for a litigation style so aggressive it bordered on merciless. But this was Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. Judge Caprio entered, and everyone stood. At 79 years old, with 37 years on the bench, he had seen his share of corporate misconduct. Still, the file before him, case number 2024 CV8829, had kept him awake the night before. The details disturbed him deeply. This court is now in session, he said quietly. Case number 2024 CV8829. Sarah Mitchell vs. Velocity Tech Incorporated. Plaintiff alleges wrongful termination. Defendant files a counterclaim alleging reputational harm and damages. Amanda Morrison rose immediately. Your Honor, she began smoothly. My client, Julian Cross, built Velocity Tech from nothing into a company valued at $300 million in just 4 years. They employ over 200 highly skilled workers and are preparing for an IPO next year. This lawsuit threatens not only my client but the livelihoods of every employee at Velocity Tech. She continued without pause. Ms. Mitchell was terminated for legitimate performance-based reasons following a documented decline in productivity and missed deadlines. The timing relative to her medical diagnosis was coincidental. However, after her termination, Ms. Mitchell publicly accused the company of discrimination, creating a toxic victim narrative that harmed employee morale, scared investors, and potentially reduced company valuation by tens of millions of dollars. Velocity Tech is seeking $2 million in compensatory damages. Judge Caprio's expression did not change. So, he said slowly, you are suing a cancer patient for $2 million because she complained about being fired. We are protecting our company from false narratives, Your Honor, Morrison replied. This is about business integrity. I see, Caprio said quietly. Ms. Mitchell, tell me what happened. Sarah rose slowly. Her voice was soft, but steady. Your Honor, I worked at Velocity Tech for 3 years as a senior software engineer. I was one of the first 10 employees. I helped build the core AI engine that the entire platform runs on. My performance reviews were consistently rated exceeds expectations. I earned $175,000 per year plus equity. She took a breath. On April 3rd, I found a lump during a self-exam. On April 9th, my doctor confirmed it was stage 2 breast cancer, aggressive. I was told I needed surgery and chemotherapy immediately. That same day, I informed my manager, Derek Chin. I explained I would need surgery in 3 weeks and some flexibility for treatment, but that I planned to keep working. Her voice wavered. He told me the company would support me. She paused. 2 days later, on April 11th, I was called into a meeting with Mr. Cross and the HR director. The meeting lasted 4 minutes. I was told my position was being eliminated effective immediately. Did they offer severance? Judge Caprio asked. 2 weeks, Sarah said. After 3 years. She swallowed. My health insurance was terminated April 30th, 3 weeks before my surgery. The courtroom murmured in disbelief. I begged them to extend my insurance through the surgery. I even offered to pay the COBRA premiums up front. Mr. Cross said no. He told me, we can't make special accommodations. It sets a bad precedent. Judge Caprio's voice remained controlled. So you lost your job and your health insurance weeks before cancer surgery? Yes, Your Honor. My surgery cost $87,000. We drained our savings, maxed out credit cards, borrowed from family. My husband took a second job. We nearly lost our house. Julian Cross sighed audibly and rolled his eyes. Judge Caprio noticed immediately. Mr. Cross, he said sharply, is there something you'd like to add? Julian straightened, adopting a tone of practiced condescension. Your Honor, this is exactly what we're talking about. Emotional manipulation. Ms. Mitchell's condition is unfortunate, but Velocity Tech is a business, not a charity. We operate in a hyper-competitive environment. We can't retain employees who can't perform at peak levels. She had cancer, Caprio said slowly. Yes, Julian replied flatly, and while that's tragic, it's not our responsibility to subsidize medical care. She chose to go public, blogs, interviews, painting us as villains. That damaged our brand, unsettled investors, and created internal instability. That has real financial consequences. The courtroom erupted into shocked whispers. Sarah's husband stood, furious, before her attorney gently pulled him back down. Let me be clear, Judge Caprio said, his voice now dangerously calm. You terminated an employee 2 days after she disclosed a cancer diagnosis. You ended her health insurance weeks before surgery. And when she spoke out, you sued her for $2 million. We terminated her for business reasons, Julian replied coolly. The cancer is irrelevant. In tech, we move fast. There's no room for weakness. Survival of the fittest, that's how disruption works. Survival of the fittest, Caprio repeated, and her cancer made her unfit. Morrison interjected quickly, Your Honor, personal opinions aside, the legal issue is whether the termination was lawful. Judge Caprio leaned back, eyes fixed on Julian Cross, and that, he said quietly, is exactly what we're about to determine. We have documentation showing performance problems, Morrison said firmly. I would like to see those records, Judge Caprio replied. For the next 18 minutes, the courtroom examined Velocity Tech's internal personnel files line by line. What emerged was impossible to ignore. Every performance review Sarah Mitchell had received over 3 years was not just positive, it was outstanding. Consistently rated exceeds expectations, praised for leadership, innovation, and reliability. Then came one glaring anomaly. 2 days after Sarah disclosed her cancer diagnosis, a hastily drafted performance improvement plan suddenly appeared in her file. It cited vague claims of missed deadlines and negative attitude, none of which had ever been documented before. Judge Caprio leaned forward. This performance improvement plan, he said slowly, was created 2 days after Ms. Mitchell informed the company she had cancer. Prior to that moment, her record was spotless. Unfortunate timing, Morrison said quickly. Coincidental. Was it? Caprio asked, turning his attention to Julian Cross. Mr. Cross, had you discussed terminating Ms. Mitchell before April 9th? Julian shifted in his seat. We're constantly evaluating talent across the organization. That's not what I asked, Caprio said flatly. Had you specifically discussed terminating Sarah Mitchell before April 9th? Julian's jaw clenched. No. So, Caprio continued, the decision to terminate her occurred after she disclosed her diagnosis. The decision was based on declining performance, Julian said. 2 days after she told you she had cancer, Caprio replied, you generated negative documentation that had never existed before and then fired her. That is your testimony. Morrison jumped in, her voice strained. Your Honor, even if the timing appears unfortunate, employers retain the right to terminate for legitimate business reasons. I'm not finished, Caprio said coldly, I'd like to hear from additional witnesses. He glanced toward the gallery. Derek Chen is present. Mr. Chen, please come forward. Derek Chen, a man in his 40s, approached the witness stand visibly uneasy. His eyes flicked briefly toward Julian before settling on the judge. You were Ms. Mitchell's direct supervisor? Caprio asked gently. Yes, Your Honor. Did you observe any performance issues with Ms. Mitchell prior to April 9th? Derek hesitated, then answered quietly, No, Your Honor. Did you author the performance improvement plan dated April 10th? Derek swallowed. No, Your Honor. A ripple of shock moved through the courtroom. Who created it? Caprio asked. HR and Mr. Cross, Derek said, his voice tight. After Sarah disclosed her diagnosis. The courtroom erupted. Julian's face flushed deep red. Morrison leaned in, whispering urgently to him. So the document used to justify her termination, Caprio said, cutting through the noise, was fabricated. Derek nodded miserably. I was told to sign it. I was told we needed documentation to protect the company. Protect it from what? Caprio asked. From a discrimination lawsuit, Derek said quietly, then, turning toward Sarah, his voice broke. I'm sorry. I should have refused. I should have stood up for you. I didn't. I was afraid. Sarah cried silently. David tightened his grip on her hand. What occurred in the termination meeting? Caprio asked. Derek took a breath. Mr. Cross said the company couldn't afford to have sick employees dragging down team energy. He said Sarah's cancer would hurt productivity. He said we needed people who were healthy and hungry. Caprio's gaze sharpened. Did he specifically reference her cancer as a reason for termination? Yes, Your Honor. Multiple times. He said, there's no room for weakness. We can't wait around for her to get better. The courtroom was stunned. There is additional evidence, Sarah's attorney said, standing. Your Honor, during discovery, we obtained internal Slack communications from Velocity Tech. With permission, I'd like to read excerpts. Caprio nodded. On April 9th, the day Ms. Mitchell disclosed her diagnosis, Mr. Cross wrote in the executive Slack channel, Sarah just told me she has cancer. This is a problem. She's on the core AI team. We can't have chemo during crunch time. Thoughts? Gasps filled the room. The CTO responded, "Can we wait until after surgery?" Mr. Cross replied, "No. Every day with a sick employee is a morale drain. And what if she dies? Then we've wasted months. Cut the loss now." The courtroom exploded in disbelief. Sarah collapsed forward, sobbing into her hands. Several people in the gallery cried openly, "Order." Caprio struck the gavel sharply when silence finally returned. His face was pale with controlled rage. "Mr. Cross," he said, "did you write those words?" "That was taken out of context," Julian stammered. "What context makes that acceptable?" Caprio asked. "In business," Julian said defensively, "hard decisions have to be made." "You referred to a human being with cancer as a loss to cut," Caprio replied. "You speculated about her death and decided she wasn't worth the time." "I was thinking about the company." "The company?" Caprio's voice rose. "You run a $300 million firm with 200 employees. Ms. Mitchell earned $175,000. And you couldn't afford to keep her insured for a few months while she fought for her life?" "It's not about money," Julian snapped. "Then what is it about?" "Culture," Julian said, standing now, his composure unraveling. "We move fast. We don't tolerate weakness. Other employees would have had to carry her workload. That's not fair." "And when she spoke publicly about being fired with cancer," Caprio said, "you sued her for $2 million. She damaged our brand," Julian shot back. "Recruiting suffered. Investors hesitated. Funding was delayed. That has consequences." "So," Caprio said icily, "you want her to pay $2 million for telling the truth?" "She made it sound worse than it was." "How?" Caprio asked. "How could it possibly sound worse?" Julian had no answer. "You learned an employee had cancer," Caprio continued, "and 2 days later you fired her. You removed her health insurance weeks before surgery. You worried about wasting time if she died. And when she told people what you did, you punished her for it. What part of that needs embellishment?" Julian sank back into his chair, exposed and silent. "There's more," Sarah's attorney said. "We interviewed 12 former Velocity Tech employees. 7 described a consistent pattern: employees terminated or demoted after serious illness, family emergencies, or mental health disclosures. 1 woman was fired weeks after adopting a child. A man was demoted after his father died. Another engineer was terminated after disclosing anxiety." The courtroom listened in stunned silence, and, the attorney added, "Velocity Tech routinely denies medical leave requests and actively discourages employees from seeking accommodations." Judge Caprio closed the file slowly, and for the first time that day, no one in the courtroom doubted how this was going to end. Judge Caprio leaned forward, his voice calm but unmistakably sharp. "We have documented performance issues," the defense claims. "I'd like to see those documents." For the next 18 minutes, the courtroom carefully reviewed Velocity Tech's personnel files. One by one, Sarah Mitchell's performance evaluations appeared on the screen. Every single review was outstanding, consistent praise for her technical skill, leadership, and reliability. That record remained flawless until April. Then, abruptly, a new document appeared. A performance improvement plan, hastily written, poorly supported, citing vague concerns about missed deadlines and attitude problems. There was no prior warning, no written counseling, no earlier complaints. Judge Caprio paused. "This performance plan," he said slowly, "was created 2 days after Ms. Mitchell disclosed her cancer diagnosis. Before that moment, every evaluation was exemplary." Defense attorney Morrison stood quickly. "Coincidental timing, Your Honor." "Was it?" Caprio replied, turning toward Julian Cross. "Mr. Cross, had you discussed terminating Ms. Mitchell before April 9th? Julian shifted in his seat. "We're always evaluating talent." "That is not what I asked," Caprio said firmly. "Had you specifically discussed terminating Sarah Mitchell before April 9th? Julian's jaw tightened. "No, so the decision to fire her came after she disclosed her cancer diagnosis." "The decision came when her performance declined," Julian answered. Caprio's voice hardened. 2 days after she told you she had cancer, you created a negative performance review where none had ever existed, then terminated her employment. That is your sworn testimony." Morrison tried desperately to redirect. "Even if the timing appears unfortunate, employers still retain the right to terminate for legitimate business reasons." "I am not finished," Caprio said coldly. "I'd like to hear from another witness." He turned toward the gallery. "Mr. Derek Chen, please approach." A man in his 40s stepped nervously to the witness stand. His eyes briefly flicked toward Julian before dropping to the floor. "You were Ms. Mitchell's direct supervisor?" Caprio asked gently. "Yes, Your Honor." "Did you observe any performance issues with Ms. Mitchell prior to April 9th? Derek hesitated, then spoke quietly. "No, Your Honor." "Did you create the performance improvement plan dated April 10th? "No. That document was created by HR and Mr. Cross after Sarah disclosed her diagnosis." The courtroom erupted. Julian's face flushed red. Morrison leaned in, whispering urgently, so the performance plan, Caprio said above the noise, was fabricated. Derek swallowed hard. I was told to sign it. I was told the company needed documentation to protect itself legally. Protect itself from what? Caprio asked. From a discrimination lawsuit, Derek replied miserably. I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have protected you. Sarah sat silently crying. Her husband gripped her hand. What occurred during the termination meeting? Caprio continued. Mr. Cross said we couldn't afford to have sick people lowering team energy. He said her cancer would make her a drag on productivity. He said keeping her would set a bad precedent. Did he reference her cancer specifically? Yes, Your Honor. Multiple times. The courtroom fell into stunned silence, then Sarah's attorney stood. Your Honor, we obtained Velocity Tech's internal Slack communications during discovery. With your permission, I'd like to read them. Caprio nodded. On April 9th, Mr. Cross wrote, Sarah just told me she has cancer. This is a problem. She's on the core AI team. We can't have chemo during crunch time. The attorney continued. Later that same day, Mr. Cross replied, every day with a sick employee is a morale drain. What if she dies? We'd have wasted months. Cut the loss now. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Sarah buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Caprio's expression was pale with fury. Did you write that, Mr. Cross? Julian stammered. It was taken out of context. What context makes that acceptable? Caprio demanded. You referred to a human being as a loss to cut. Julian stood, voice rising. In tech, we move fast. We don't have room for weakness. You fired a woman with cancer, Caprio said icily. Then sued her for telling the truth. There was more. Former employees testified to a pattern, people fired after illness, family emergencies, grief. A culture where being human was treated as a liability. Caprio finally delivered his ruling. Velocity Tech's countersuit was dismissed with prejudice. Sarah Mitchell had been wrongfully terminated in direct violation of federal and state law. The performance plan was fabricated. Velocity Tech was ordered to reinstate her, pay full back wages, $2.5 million in damages, lifetime health insurance coverage, and a $5 million fine. You cannot break people, Caprio said, leaning forward. People are not things to optimize. The courtroom erupted. Sarah cried with relief. Julian sat motionless. Months later, Velocity Tech collapsed under investigation. Julian was forced out. Sarah survived cancer, rebuilt her life, and became an advocate for humane workplaces. Justice had spoken, and this time, humanity won.